back to the show, guys. My guest this week is the definition of do-it-yourself. Becci Wallace is nothing short of an amazing artist and person. Having a successful solo career as a DIY artist, she has the heart of gold and is one of the kindest people I know. Having a portfolio career, the Glasgow-based singer-songwriter and producer is what the music industry is all about in Scotland and has established herself within the Scottish songwriting community. As a solo artist, Becci's first album, Fragmentality, was on the Scottish Album of the Year long list. It was released in 2015 and gained wide recognition across Scotland and secured Becci local and national radio play. Along with Becci's very successful first album, her most recent project, Present Tense, was released in November 2020 and featured on the BBC's Roddy Hart's Record of Notes. It also reached national radio in Scotland, even stretching as far as local stations across the UK and Europe. Becci is also a university lecturer at the West of Scotland. She has her Masters in Songwriting and is currently doing her PhD at Edinburgh University, researching hip-hop pedagogy as early intervention. The new Hellfire Club have said that Becci is electric, haunting, mesmerising, and a voice to silence a room, but that's also just my interviewing skills. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. Ladies and gentlemen, Becci Wallace. Welcome, Becci. How are you?
Hi, that was no pressure after that introduction, Jackie.
Got to make sure everyone's got a lovely, nice introduction. So, just to start off, just like what was your early career like? How did you know that you wanted to go into music?
I mean, I kind of always knew, I guess, but I didn't really know what it was going to look like. I just kind of had that compulsion to make music, which I think people who are creative get. So for me, I actually started in musical theatre. So I did I think my first part, I was like 4. I played Gretel in The Sound of Music. And then that was obviously in church theatre and stuff, and I
Yeah.
sang in choirs and I loved singing. My mum had a really, really cool taste in music, she liked Stevie Wonder and Joni Mitchell and the Carpenters and stuff like that. So I pure loved like close harmonies, and she kind of taught me how to sing harmonies. So I was like really into that, just I couldn't really place what it was I wanted to do. But I was always a poetry writer, so like even daft wee things, but I always kind of wrote words and ideas. So early on, that was kind of like my formative music. And then I got into ended up doing some quite big shows with some quite good parts. And then I lost my voice completely. I had to go and get my tonsils out. Um, when I was like 14. So before that, I was actually touring with musical theatre by that point. So it's like kind of, yeah, that kind of thing, I guess. And then I kind of get into writing a little bit more. I think I probably fancied a guy or something who played the guitar. So like learned the guitar off of him. It was Duran he was into, and kind of learned the guitar off of that. And then from there, just kind of started putting, I guess, music to my words.
Yeah.
And then I just started kind of gigging in little pubs and clubs when I was younger. And it just kind of went from there. I was up and down a bit. I
Yeah.
don't think I was really a full music artist until I was in my mid-20s, but I was playing music in pubs and stuff from like 14.
No, I think that's great. I think you see a lot of people coming through like doing theatre, musical theatre and all that, then they kind of go off to like a single strand of like music or something, or even like film or something like that. But I know with speaking with you in the past that you said that you're a very shy person, which to me, I can't believe because you're like one of the bubbliest people I know. So like why were you so shy? I remember you saying in some classes that you thought it was kind of very cliquey, or it was kind of like I don't know. It was like not really. You're talking about safe spaces and all that kind of stuff in the music when you kind of you go into it.
Yeah, I mean, I still am, and I think like people can be quite precious, and creativity can be a hard thing to, I guess, A, share with people, and B, find a place where you feel accepted for what is essentially a weird compulsion to rhyme and sing at people, so I was always shy. I always had this kind of do better brain. Like I always felt like I wasn't good enough, especially when I was younger. A lot of people get that. And I feel like I'm loud and confident, but I think it's just the way I was brought up and where I was brought up and stuff in Glasgow. Like, it was just like you didn't call yourself an artist because you might have get a doing if you did that. So, like you just kind of done that and didn't really show anyone it and stuff. And yeah, I used to be like, I mean, I still am. I get really, really nervous before I go on stage, but I think that that's really healthy, and it keeps me on my toes.
Yeah.
I'm not so nervous now about like dealing with crowds and stuff, but I was certainly shy. A lot of it as well was to do with kind of maybe making a few bad choices in life and not really like focusing on my music and seeing it as important, So I just kind of hid it quite a
Yeah.
lot. Maybe all the way up into my 20s, I was like, I was like running bars and stuff. So it was kind of not cool to be a musician. We kind of snarled at musicians, like, you'd be putting on a gig and you'd be like, oh God, here we go again, like, in Barfly or wherever I was working.
Yeah.
So it was like a lot of things, but mostly just my own heat, like peer pressure and feeling like I was going to be judged.
Yeah.
And like it wasn't good enough, and which is, it sounds so daft saying it now, but it's important to, I think, express that those things happen.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people kind of just go through their careers and they don't really talk about feeling nerves and not feeling good enough, especially when you're in a teaching position, and then it's like you still feel like that sometimes, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
But I think we're definitely the same in the way that, like, I love music, but coming through high school and all that, you end up thinking, oh, I'm too cool for school and all that. Like, who wants to do music and all that kind of stuff? And then I just reached an age where I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to go for it. I don't care what my friends say. I don't care what anyone says. But also, like, I'm very, me, I can talk for ages. I love the sound of my own voice. But also, when it comes to like doing like projects or doing work within the university, I kind of go into my shell a bit because I'm scared to put out like my creative input, because again, I don't know everything and I don't pretend that I know everything. But sometimes music is like, I don't know, some people might think they're better than you because they do a lot of they do a lot of work within the music industry, or they think they know everything kind of thing. So they see someone
I
who's
think
maybe,
that's one of the biggest dangers,
yeah,
like as a person, is to ever think you know better than anyone, for a start.
exactly,
And secondly, is to, create a mental hierarchy, like what's good and what isn't. And when
yeah,
you're DIY, you can't do that, man, because
nah,
it's like everybody's got their own wee roots through things. But I
exactly,
totally understand how you felt like that.
yeah.
I think
It's
it's quite common in artists.
Yeah, I think it is very scary, but then once you push the boundary and all that, and you get to meet loads of different people, loads of different ideas, it just kind of oozes out you, which oozes a bit of a weird word, but yeah. So
I love it.
with your first album, Fragmentality, and it reached like the Say Long list, it must have been quite emotional for you, obviously, coming from like want to hide your creative practice, but now you're on the Say Long list and Roddy Hart and all that kind of stuff. So it must have been pretty
Yeah.
amazing for you.
It was weird because even then, when I released that album, I wasn't really tuned into the industry so much. I remember somebody putting something up on Twitter, like, well done, Becci Wallace, this, that. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then because I didn't know what the Say Long List was. And then I remember I was going on holiday and it was David Scott, I think, had shared that one of my songs had been played on Roddy Hart. I didn't know what Roddy Hart was. I was just like, oh, cool. I mean, I know it sounds daft. I'm not trying
Yeah,
to be blasé about it. Like, I put a lot more value into that stuff now. Back then, when I released that first album, it was like, I had honestly, Jack, like I've got a drawer under me here. I won't bore you, right? But the drawer underneath me here is filled with books from like 1995 to now, right?
yeah,
Filled with writing and like teenage angst and urges and lust and nonsense, right? It's all down there in those books. And so that first album, like, was an accumulative kind of effort of all that stuff. So it was dead. Like, I was just focused on putting something out there,
yeah.
and it was UWS, man, like, because it was kind of part of my master's project as well.
Okay.
So to like frame it and
Hmm.
give it a concept and stuff.
Yeah.
So I did it like a travel diary, but the actual person I'm singing to is Glasgow, but it sounds like a lover. Like, so
Yeah.
that's the point of the album. So it sounds like, um, so yeah, man, like it was cool. It was really good, but I still at that point really didn't understand the significance of that.
Hmm.
but it was like there's songs from that album that people still ask for now,
Yeah.
7 years later, in gigs,
Yeah.
especially Tiny Mortals, the last song, and Phuket Days. So I understand now that it had impact and significance, but I didn't quite get it at the time. I wasn't even part of PRS when it came out, so I never get any PRS.
Oh God, learned your lesson
Just
from there.
I did, man.
I
I
think
did.
that's uh, amazing because I love UWS as in like the they give you all the tools that you need. So like sometimes there's like not obviously there's always like kind of excuse why you might not do something, but also there's sometimes not really an excuse why you can't get stuff done because UWS are there. They give you the recording studios, the podcast studios, whatever you need. You've got amazing lecturers who have been there in the same shoes. Most of them have always kind of been students and then came up to kind of shape the young minds of the next generation. So I think that's amazing, and also for like your songs that came out in 2015 for them still to show relevance and nowadays is, I think that shows you off as a songwriter. So again,
I love to
hats off
show
to
off.
you.
Well, UWS is great, and I'd love to show UWS off as well. But also, as
Yeah,
someone who's now in the kind of in the faculty,
yeah,
like we understand as well that sometimes it will take 3 or 4 years after you graduate to
yeah,
really see the significance of what's going on. Because, like, no matter how much you teach someone, or tell someone, or help someone, or converse with someone, or share with someone, whatever,
yeah,
everybody's going to go and do their own wee path. And so, actually, I think the real value in some of the teaching that happens now for a lot of people, it'll be once they release their first single, or once they've been offered a contract or whatever. Once something like that happens, then they'll go, wait a minute, what is happening here? What is this? How should I react to this? And then it
yeah,
will kind of kick in. Certainly that was the case for me.
yeah. I
It
think
was like,
I'll be looking back at my notes from UWS for the rest of my life just to be like, right, okay, that's how you do it. Okay. So do you think you being a DIY artist, do you think music is becoming more DIY, especially after the pandemic?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the pandemic was the rise of the bedroom artist. So that was like a really cool time to learn skills. I mean, this studio got created during the pandemic because I had it run the other way, my desk at the time, because this wall looks cool. I can't be bothered showing you. I'll show you, right. So the wall looks cool, right? So I would have it
Oh,
like,
that is very cool, actually.
it's cool. And so I would do like all my live gigs there in front of
Yeah.
that wall and stuff. So like people got super kind of intuitive as to what they needed to do, especially people who had, especially established artists, DIY artists, because a lot of us were making our money for gigging or releasing music. So being of the DIY mindset, the entrepreneurial mindset, for us, it was like, right, this is what we've got. How do we work with it? So I think like for a lot of artists, man, this was, the lockdown, especially DIY artists, wasn't the end of the world. Lots of people learned new skills, did like production stuff. They didn't retrain. They trained themselves more in the stuff that they needed to know in music. So like I got better at Pro Tools. I know people had never maybe just released on GarageBand and suddenly they were releasing music, etc. So it was definitely the rise of the bedroom artist, but I think that DIY in general is just the way it is going to be moving forward. So I won't bore you too much with this, but if you take, for instance, some of the, say you take someone like Paul McGeekin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So who's, a legend, but I mean, Paul would have had a record deal in the 80s, right? And that would have been lucrative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, same with somebody like David Scott, they might have had 3 or 4 record deals and
Yeah.
all of them were lucrative. So all of them were a record label going, here's hundreds of money, go and take time and make a thing,
Yeah.
right? Now that does not happen now. What either happens is you get yourself to 100,000 likes and then a record label swoops in and says, you look like you're doing well, can we capitalize on that?
Yeah.
And that can be really good. It can be a little bit dodgy. You've got great examples of that, like people like Ed Sheeran or Lily Allen or whatever.
Yeah.
Or you're just kind of told that there's no really any route for you to make music. So you've only got two options really.
Yeah.
And both of those options start with DIY, you know. So I do think it's kind of, I mean, for most people, the only plausible way forward. And I'll just add one more thing. I think I talk about this in class a lot, but
Of course.
one of the best things about it is that I don't have to go and work in a bar and then come back and make music
Mm-hmm.
because I've put my mindset to DIY. Everything is music.
Yeah.
Everything that makes me money is music. A child has entered.
There we go.
Two, 2 seconds, right? This
That's
is
all
what it's
right.
live. That's what happens.
This is DIY.
I'm in a meeting. You go downstairs just now, please. Go and watch fairy tales and go and say to Daddy. Go, go, go. Close the door, right? Go on, go, go, go.
Now that's amazing. That's a podcast there. This is going to get 1 million hits now.
That's it. That'll just be that bit of it though. So I think that yeah, like repositioning your mind to go, right, you know, maybe the furthest I'll ever get is to the top of the Scottish charts, but I'll have a life that's music, you know, and
Exactly.
it will be well paid and it will be good, you know,
Yeah.
but it will only be Beyonce, but that's all right.
Yeah.
So I think,
think
yeah, just about what you feel about that stuff, you know.
every artist I think feels they all start DIY. They all start from the beginning of having kind of like you have to do it yourself. You're like there's a reason some artists obviously get picked up by labels and all that is because whatever they've done it themselves and it's good enough for an artist, a record label to come for them. Either some artists say, you know what, no, I want to do it myself, and I take my hats off to any artist that can do that. Or some people say, oh, you know what, right, okay, a record label, this could be kind of life changing and all that. But I
Yeah,
think
for sure.
obviously record labels, it kind of sometimes crosses a very thin line of it looks like they're just always in it for money because as you said, it's like how can we capitalize on this artist
Well,
being
they are in it for money.
yeah
That's their job, you know. But I think like obviously it's amazing if you can get a record deal
yeah of
and you
course
know and get 2 or 3 number one hits or whatever.
of
Sorry,
course
that's
no well
great, you know. And that's what we hope for everybody, you know. Like Lewis Capaldi was at Motherwell College, you know. It is possible.
yeah
Obviously working with that label, and you know you do see it. So, but then there's equally as many examples of people that do get record deals and then go DIY, like Katie Tunstall, for instance,
mm-hmm.
or Emma Gillespie, Emma's Imagination,
Yeah
or B Charlotte, or do you know, like people who went, oh wait a minute, no thanks, and then went
yeah
back to
and
DIY,
yeah
you know. And there's
definitely
a reason for that too. So it's just about like being aware of it, you know, and knowing what you want. And I think like if you're a pop musician and you can get a record deal and get a few top 10 hits, go mental, you know.
yeah of
That's
course
amazing. Good
uh,
luck.
so now I know you're not only a singer-songwriter or producer, but you're also becoming a very well-versed academic within the music industry. So why did you choose to do your PhD? Did you think it was just kind of a natural step from your master's? You're like in for a penny, in for a pound, or
No, my PhD was started 8 years after my master's was finished. So I went out into the world after my master's degree, and I really refined my practice as a community artist. You know, so one of the cool things about my master's was, apart from getting to release fragmentality, and that was doing its own thing, and there's something really good about that, right? So releasing a record that does quite well will then give you the clout to go into communities,
yeah,
right? So communities is where the money is, and I know that sounds almost quite like what's the word I'm looking for, like manipulative or whatever,
yeah,
but actually, you know, everyone's got to make a living, you've got to make money, right? So if you want to work in music and you like sharing music and talking about music like we're doing now, community music's a really good place to do that.
yeah,
So I went for my master's degree. Don't get me wrong, I was working in swimming pools as a lifeguard by then, and also with Glasgow Life Communities. But I went freelance when I finished my masters, and I went freelance and still had a job in the council, and I started to just kind of dance around this freelance idea and think, you know, and put myself into certain places. A couple of times I kind of went to a community and I was like, this is what I've got to offer. Did a lot of volunteering and kind of built my reputation up as a community practitioner.
Yeah.
And then through that, I really found my focus and who I liked to work with. So through community practice, I realised because of my own background and probably just because of my kind of personality that and because of my eclectic, long and wide taste in music,
Yeah.
that I was really kind of vibrating on the same frequency as a lot of people that were working class or had come from adversity
Yeah.
and were maybe getting chucked. So a lot of times I would get people who are kind of getting chucked into community music as a last resort by their school or by the prison system, or do you know what I mean, whatever, or they'll just, you know, the last thing they do is go, oh well, let's try the arts. And then so they throw the arts at these people. But a lot of the time that's where the most magic was happening, and I started to get like a serious buzz out of it, like just working with people that really needed music. And then I started to ask myself, well, why do these people need music? Why does music work? This is something, and more importantly, why has this never been tried before now? Like you're talking about people who are now not able to finish school. Or are now in the prison system because they've never found a way to express their feelings or emotions, never found a way to express their anger, never found a way to be like, you know, express how they feel about society. And they've been told that they speak badly, they've been told that they're stupid, you know, all that stuff. And actually, they've just not tried to be creative because no one's given them that option or made space for that to happen in a way that they're allowed to. So what I realised for that is that a lot of it is down to language and like what we allow people to say and how we allow people to speak and who makes those rules and why are they so significant. So then like after years and years of kind of building strong practice around people in recovery and so on and so forth, I was like, right, there's a research here that has to be done because we need to be able to say to the Scottish Government that there's ways in which we could be saving a lot of young people because sorry, I probably should shut up in a second. The attainment gap, right? So the gap of attainment is still class-based, right? So it's still upper class people will do better and lower class people will do worse. And that is just the line in the sand as it is, right? But a lot of that is to do with how class structures are created and who they've been created for. So if you don't create something that young people who identify as a different class or have an adverse background or, you know, have additional support needs of any kind can deal with and can relate to, then you're never going to be able to improve education. So my view is that hip hop specifically for young people is a really good access tool for lots of the creative arts because they don't need to know how to play an instrument. They don't need to know how to sing. They just need to know how to speak. And once they can speak, then they can share ideas and they can swear. It's fine by me, you know, and they can just like, so that's why I got back into education was to kind of, I'm trying to make a dossier essentially and go to the government, try that.
Definitely. I think
seemingly it's radical. I don't know.
Well, again, I was talking with Jim Prime last week, and obviously the work he does with River Garden and all that rehabilitation within music and stuff like that. And my mum has been a prison officer for 25 plus years, so she can see the difference. Like when you take a prisoner from that kind of bubble of always being in a cell and you give them music or you give them some sort of creative practice and what wonders it can do. But obviously it's not always just like rehabilitation like drugs and alcohol. It's also like to express anger, to see how they're feeling. You see a lot of hip hop artists and all that, they're telling a story of where they've came from, where they live, what kind of circumstances they are in through their music. And they might not always be out there protesting and all that, but their music is also a kind of form of protest to show the government, look, this is the kind of sometimes a shithole where we're living, and this is the kind of the trials and tribulations that we have to go through to just pay the next bill and all that kind of stuff. So I think that was obviously a follow-up question of obviously you're an amazing community practitioner and all that. You've done some great work with the likes of Music Broth and local radio stations like Sunny G, like with Amazing Steg G and all that kind of stuff. So do you think that DIY music is all about communities and stuff like that? And it's obviously, of course, do it yourself as an artist, but is it also do it for your community as well? And there's a lot of DIY practitioners that also go into kind of community building?
Aye, man. I think, yeah. But also, you don't need to rattle people over the head with that. But
Yeah,
it's certainly part of the ethos. But it's more of a natural thing, right?
yeah,
Because if I want to release a record, right, that before we get into community practice in general and just why it's community, if I want to release a record and I can play the synth and the guitar
yeah,
and I can do bassline mixing, I'm going to make a call out to my community to find someone who can help me with the mixing, right? And then if I want to like put on an event, then I'm going to pull people I know that can help me, including other artists, a community of artists that can come and play at that event.
yeah,
If I know them, I'm going to pull strings, right? Obviously.
of course.
And the same kind of applies across the landscape of DIY. So that's the kind of selfish area where you want to succeed, but in order to succeed, you can't really do it yourself. So that's not what it means. It means do it without commercial help.
Yeah,
So then you've got, for instance, what we call meeting a community of networks, where I'm dead attached to music, but often Sonny Govern's and real time music. I think
yeah,
all of those for me, like the way they work, the way they operate, is just so positive and engaging, and it's so for other people. So then I'm really attracted to them because I want to work within a framework that helps me work for other people as well,
yeah,
and kind of highlights the community. And then there's also a sense of loyalty and locality. So like
mhm.
I'm from Govan. Well, that's a lie. I'm from just outside of Govan.
Yeah. Ah, well.
Just before somebody's like, "You're from Govan, what street? What street you from?" I'm from Hillington, and then I moved to Moss Park. But like that's my area. I went to school there, like
Yeah,
I just like that's the way that those people speak, the whole kind of attitude of the South Side, the working class South Side. I get that. I am
yeah,
that. I live that. So like that connects me to that community. And when you start to succeed, especially when you succeed in a way that's freelance and really easy to share and really easy to bring people in on, then you naturally want to go into your community and like give something back, because just the whole focus of DIY is so on this level. It's not like shoot yourself to the top and fuck everybody else,
yeah,
like it's much more just rooted in community and all the help and learning that you do along the way. Once you get to a place where you can do community arts, it just kind of makes sense to do it.
yeah,
I know people that have just totally accidentally fallen into community arts, man,
yeah.
and then they're like, fuck, this is amazing. How did I not do this before?
Yeah.
Makes
Well,
sense.
all I can say is don't change. And I thank you so much for coming and talking a little bit about your life and career. Guys, I
It's a
thank you
pleasure.
for watching this week's episode on Jack Talks Music. I will leave links down below to Becci's social media and channels and stuff like that. And I will see you in the next one. Cheers.